Good morning and welcome to the ParkBridge Wealth Management Winter Webinar Series. This program is entitled Retirement 2.0 Real Retirement Planning Strategies and Considerations for 2026. As always, my name is Jonathan Shenkman. I'm the President and Chief Investment Officer of ParkBridge Wealth Management. And in that role, I serve in a fiduciary capacity to help my clients achieve their financial objectives. My practice focuses on working with high net worth families, businesses, and not-for-profits. I manage individual investment portfolios, trust accounts, corporate retirement plans, and endowments to help my clients achieve their financial goals. In addition to the 20 or so events I run every year, I also do a fair amount of writing on the topics of investing and financial planning. And you can read my work in a variety of periodicals, including Barron's, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and Trust and Estates Magazine, to name just a few. You can see all my work on my website at parkbridgewealth.com/articles or by following me on social media at Jonathan on Money. Additionally, you can check out my weekly podcast, which is also called Jonathan on Money, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, with that, let's jump into the program. So, when I work with people approaching retirement, I often find myself repeating the same line, which is, this is not your father or grandfather's retirement. People are living longer, family dynamics look different, and the challenges facing retirees today bear little resemblance to those of 20 or 30 years ago. Yet many investors still anchor their expectations to what they saw their parents do. There is certainly value in learning from previous generations, but it is equally important to recognize how much has changed. This includes longevity, lifestyle, work patterns, and the investment environment are all different. The days of buying a triple tax-free municipal bond yielding 9%, then collecting a few years' worth of Social Security and dropping dead before 70 are long gone for many retirees. Anyone nearing retirement today needs realistic expectations and a strategy grounded in today's reality, not yesterday's. And that's the focus of today's program. I want to talk about real-world planning ideas and the right perspective for retirees in 2026 and beyond. So one common concern among folks in their 60s is determining the right time to retire. Before handing in your resignation letter, it's important to first consider these core aspects of a successful retirement, and I call this your retirement readiness checklist. The first item on this list is to wipe out all your debt. Debt can be a useful tool in many aspects of life, like buying a home, affording a car, growing your business. As long as a person acts responsibly and has a long runway to pay back that loan, it can enhance their life and take their career potentially to the next level. However, as folks enter their retirement years, many shift to living on a fixed income. Being saddled with debt and its associated extra expenses can be burdensome and make retirement life much more stressful. That's why I advise all retirees to eliminate all debt before retirement, and that includes your mortgage. Next, be sure to tackle all known big ticket expenses before you retire. This includes major home repairs, car replacements, or lifestyle upgrades so you can pay for them from income while you're working rather than withdrawing down your portfolio early. Also, assess your income sources and expenses. Creating a budget for a multi-decade retirement is not practical. Prices change, unforeseen expenses arise, and life takes unpredictable turns. However, there needs to be a general calculation to determine if you can afford a particular lifestyle. This computation doesn't need to involve anything fancy. Start by just listing your income sources, such as Social Security, maybe a pension, portfolio, or rental income. And next, tally your living expenses like food, rent, taxes, and transportation costs. Make sure to also factor in any other costs associated with living the retirement you envision, including travel or hobbies. Finally, ask yourself just two questions. One, does my income exceed my expenses? And two, can I afford to live this lifestyle for the rest of my life? If the answer to either of these questions is no, then changes must be made. You can consider working longer, even part-time, moving to a cheaper locale, which is popular, or adjusting your retirement lifestyle. And next is to simplify your financial life. Keeping your finances consolidated and organized is always sensible. This is even more important as you age. As a youngster, you may be able to more easily track your multitude of accounts at various brokerage firms. This will become increasingly more cumbersome and stressful as you get older. I suggest to all my clients approaching retirement to consolidate their accounts wherever possible. This includes rolling over old 401ks, consolidating various IRAs and taxable accounts where appropriate, and managing all checking at one institution. Furthermore, having a seamless process for a child or trusted family member To make decisions on your accounts in case you no longer have capacity will save a lot of heartache and frustration later. Now let's discuss some more technical planning ideas in the years leading up to retirement. Let's start with the impact of Secure Act 2.0. First, it increased the age at which required minimum distributions or RMDs must begin. The starting age rose from 72 to 73 in 2023 and will rise again to 75 for those born in 1960 or later, allowing more years of tax-deferred growth. These data points should factor into your withdrawal strategy. Second, catch-up contribution rules were enhanced. Investors who are over age 50 can now contribute an additional $1,100 to an IRA in 2026 for a total contribution of $8,600. If you're contributing to a company retirement plan, you could plow in $32,500 if you're over age 50. People who are between the ages of 60 and 63 can make super catch-up contributions to their 401ks for a total in 2026 contribution of $34,750. Keep in mind, though, that high-income earners' catch-up contributions must go into Roth 401ks rather than traditional tax-deferred 401ks starting this year. I highlight all these points because these additional contributions can add up in retirement, especially for people who didn't start saving until later in their career. So take advantage of these higher limits. Next, in the years leading up to retirement, it's more important than ever to set up a sensible investment program. At a minimum, all soon-to-be retirees should implement the following strategies within their investment program, regardless of their level of wealth, in order to achieve their goals and mitigate risk. First, implement a bond tent. A bond tent is a strategy that puts a few years of expense money into high-quality short-term bonds or cash equivalents to help prepare for retirement. This approach aims to reduce risk from market downturns that may be devastating while an investor begins withdrawing money from their portfolio. Next, please diversify. The market moves in cycles. No one knows what asset class will outperform and which will plummet in value. This is why spreading your investments into multiple areas of the market is always prudent, especially when you're no longer earning an income to replenish your nest egg. Also, be sure to maintain an allocation to equities. In today's world, it is common for retirees to experience a multi-decade retirement. In order to maintain one's standard of living while minimizing the probability of outliving one's funds, having exposure to stocks is imperative. Gone are the days when folks put their entire portfolio in municipal bonds and lived off the interest payments. The market has changed and so has longevity expectations. Utilize stocks to plan accordingly. And finally, be sure to avoid chasing yield. Keep in mind that risk and return are inextricably linked. If an investment has a high yield, it means it is risky, and piling into only high-yielding investments can blow up your portfolio, make it stagnant for years. We're seeing this right now with the private credit market. Instead, I urge investors that are in retirement to pursue a total return approach to generate portfolio income where they can rely on dividends, interest, and capital appreciation. This strategy has the highest probability of allowing folks to achieve their goals, not run out of money while also managing risk. Another point which I alluded to is to figure out your safe withdrawal rate. A safe withdrawal rate is the percentage that retirees can withdraw from their accounts each year without running out of money before reaching the end of their lives. This is a key aspect of determining how long you can maintain your lifestyle. A popular guideline is the 4% rule, which suggests that an individual can withdraw 4% of their total portfolio value annually to sustain their lifestyle without running out of money. When determining your safe withdrawal rate, it's important to keep in mind your legacy goals and how it impacts your retirement goals. Your legacy goals involve estate planning and how much money you'd like to leave to your children or charity potentially. This objective will directly impact how much money you can withdraw each year from your nest egg. Next consideration are Roth conversion strategies. Roth conversions often focus on filling lower marginal tax brackets in years when income is temporarily reduced, such as early retirement. By converting just enough each year to top off a favorable bracket, investors can control lifetime tax liability. Carefully planning is essential to avoid triggering higher Medicare Part B and Part D premiums, which are based on modified adjusted gross income. Conversions can also reduce future RMDs by shrinking traditional IRA balances, improving long-term tax flexibility. A disciplined, multi-year approach rather than a large single conversion typically produces better tax smoothing and risk management. But here's the most important point about Roth conversions, which is while they're useful to some, they should be a low priority item for most retirees. Paying off your debt, consolidating your investments, downsizing, maintaining a safe withdrawal rate, a proper investment allocation, and so many other items are far more important than Roth conversions. Some tax professionals on this call may find this triggering, and I know I'm going to get angry emails, but it's absolutely the truth. Stay focused on the high priority items. It's also imperative to determine your Social Security claiming strategy. Social Security is a crucial income source for many retired Americans, especially as we live longer. Getting it right is a critical for a successful retirement for many. If you're in good health and don't currently need the cash flow, holding off on claiming Social Security is a smart strategy to mitigate the impact of inflation. Today, full retirement age, or FRA as it's called, for a retiree to get their full benefit ranges from 66 to 67 depending on the year you were born. One can claim Social Security as early as age 62, but anything before FRA comes with a reduction in benefits of up to 30%. Conversely, Security will add an additional 8% delayed retirement credit to your monthly payout for each year up until age 70 that you hold off on claiming benefits. That's a guaranteed annual return of 8% for deferral after your FRA. This could be immensely helpful during the later years of retirement as inflation and healthcare costs rise. Also, consider Medicare and Medigap deadlines. Medicare is a federal health insurance program that can provide coverage beginning as early as the first day of the month in which you turn 65. And at age 64 and 9 months, you have a 7-month initial Medicare sign-up window. And if you miss this window, you may have to pay higher premiums for the rest of your life. An exception is if you still have medical insurance through your spouse's employer. In that case, you can postpone enrolling in Medicare until that coverage ends without having to pay higher premiums later. Now let's turn to Medigap, which is Medicare supplemental insurance, which is a private insurance that covers some of the out-of-pocket costs not covered by Medicare. There's a 6-month enrollment window up for Medigap that begins on the first day of the month in which you turn 65. During this enrollment period, you can't be denied Medigap coverage or charge extra because of poor health. However, if you miss the enrollment deadline, you may pay higher premiums for life or even be denied coverage. Lastly, and very importantly, healthcare planning. As I mentioned, healthcare planning requires precise Medicare enrollment to avoid penalties, proactive management of IRMA income thresholds to control premium surcharges. It also requires evaluating long-term care funding options and maximizing HSA contributions and tax-free withdrawals. Each one of these topics can be covered at length, especially long-term care planning. The one thing I'll say on this point is that it's important to be proactive and discuss each item with your financial advisor in the years leading up to retirement. Based on your level of wealth, certain areas will require more or less planning. For example, if you have an 8-figure portfolio, then IRMA income thresholds and a long-term care costs are less impactful versus many other families who have less resources where those costs will be more burdensome. Now let's discuss keys to retirement success in 2026 that aren't necessarily about money. First is to choose appropriate housing. While increasing costs related to taxes, repairs, upkeep costs are all challenging on a fixed budget, there are also non-financial issues that are important for a multi-decade retirement. And these include having a home with, just as some examples, single-story layouts to eliminate stairs, barrier-free bathrooms with walk-in showers and grab bars, wide doorways and hallways for wheelchair or walker access, open floor plans for easy navigation, accessible outdoor spaces such as a patio with level surfaces, which is important, installing smart home technology for lighting, security, emergency alerts. The bottom line here is this: a home that's set up to accommodate aging will allow retirees to live there for longer with a lower probability of suffering serious injury. Next is to make sure you have a lot of friends populating your social life. As people age, social circles tend to shrink, but the quality of relationships often improves. Older adults should prioritize emotionally fulfilling connections, which are extremely beneficial in retirement. And studies have shown that strong relationships might help protect against cognitive decline, buffer against depression, and offer higher levels of happiness. None of this is a secret to anyone. Prioritizing healthy socializing is so imperative. This can happen at places of worship, study groups, book clubs, the golf course, and many other venues. Next is to develop a strong sense of purpose. Remember, after 4 decades in the workforce, a career can become part of your identity. Waking up one day without that identity can be a large hole to fill. To fill this void, start by making a list of things that are important to you. The next step is figuring out how to incorporate those interests into your everyday life while in retirement. Family and spirituality might be part of your sense of purpose. However, family members can have their own schedules, and hang out at your place of worship most of the day might not be practical. Instead, determine projects or causes that you care about and explore how to get involved. This type of work can cause an immense amount of reward and give you a reason to jump out of bed every morning. And finally, keep your mind and body working. A phrase I hear often from retirees is use it or lose it. If you don't use your mind, your body, it will inevitably deteriorate. That's why it's imperative to figure out a way to keep your mind and body working. The retirees I work with who are most successful generally have a physical activity that they enjoy and do consistently. Pushing yourself cognitively and physically can help prolong your active retirement years. In addition to physical activity, finding cognitive exercises that push you to think is extremely helpful. And this might be playing games, which can double as a good social activity, writing a book or a regular column in the local paper, or teaching a course at a nearby high school or community college. There are many ways of exercising your brain. The key is finding something you enjoy so you could stick with it over the long term. Now let's discuss common mistakes folks make in retirement, and this will help listeners plan accordingly. Retirement mistake number one is failure to retire to something, and I've alluded to this. While employed full time, folks tend to complain about tedious tasks such as commuting, meetings, difficult coworkers, difficult clients, and other activities. These activities, whether they're pleasant or not, provide folks with a daily structure. Unfortunately, many retirees find out within a few months into retirement that there's a lot of time to kill when you're not working. While hobbies, dining out, and traveling are all worthwhile endeavors, none of them are full time pursuits. Many people envision their retirement as a life of leisure, sipping cocktails by the beach, playing golf, visiting their grandchildren. Unfortunately, most hobbies can't be done full time. It's imperative for folks to develop and even test out their daily routine in retirement while they're still working. This aspect of retirement readiness is just as important as the financial considerations. The second retirement mistake is taking too much investment risk. The combination of having more time and sitting on a pool of assets may tempt retirees to play the market or make various speculative investments. This is not the phase of life to take these risks, even if they're small. Gambling is addictive and the slope is slippery. A few lucky trades or imprudent deals that may work out can cause someone to risk more capital, which may ultimately lead to wiping out a significant portion of one's nest egg. Retirement is the time to enjoy the fruits of your labor. It is not the time to risk your capital when you have a harder time to earn it back. This necessitates taking proper precautions to protect your funds from both investment risk and inflation. Retirement mistake number three is ignoring your safe withdrawal rate. I brought this up once already, but it's worth repeating. Retirees must spend wisely. Unlike working years, overspending in retirement can quickly deplete savings, leaving little room to recover. A prudent withdrawal strategy is essential to avoid relying on family or facing financial hardship. Discipline matters more when income is fixed and time to rebuild is very limited. And retirement mistake number four is neglecting long-term care and estate planning. As I mentioned previously, take the time to sit down with a competent attorney and insurance advisor who specialize in these issues. An attorney can draft the relevant documentation, such as a will, but also the appropriate documentation needed for when you're still alive but need extra help. This includes a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney, trust if necessary. This planning will ensure that your family's provided for in the event of deteriorating health, as well as for orderly disposition of your assets upon death. On the insurance front, while life and disability insurance may be less relevant, long-term care insurance is imperative. After all, about 70% of retirees have long-term care needs at some point in retirement. The cost of this care may range from $70,000 to nearly $130,000, perhaps even more, depending on the type of care and what part of the country you reside in. Failure to plan for how to handle these expenses will have a devastating impact on your finances, as well as your family, who will need to determine how to manage your care. If long-term care insurance is not an option due to bad health or financial concerns, then other options should be discussed with your attorney, who may suggest Medicaid planning. The key with all this type of planning is to get it done well before they may become relevant. And finally, mistake number five is not spending your money. While working, people are told repeatedly to save and invest. However, few people are encouraged to spend their nest egg in retirement. This shift in psyche from saving to spending is a difficult transition for many. I've seen it. Retirees often have feelings of guilt about spending down their nest egg, thinking that perhaps the money would be better used by their kids or charity. This is the wrong approach. As I remind my clients, money is not a scorecard to compare to others, rather, it's a tool to enhance one's life. After decades of making money, saving and investing it, you have earned the right to spend it. As long as you're spending within your means, it should be done guilt free. This is also a good time to remind listeners that there is no award for being the richest person in the graveyard. Speaking of spending money, let's discuss a popular topic in retirement, which is a bucket list. A bucket list isn't just an itemized agenda of experiences or achievements that a person hopes to accomplish before they kick the bucket or die. And I've always been a big fan of being goal oriented and have encouraged clients to jot down a list of their own goals. However, after working with hundreds of clients in retirement, I think many people take the wrong approach to their bucket list. Here's a bit of a modern twist on the bucket list concept. First, don't wait until retirement. In my experience, many people accumulate a list of things they want to do once they're no longer working. Unfortunately, the realities of life may get in the way of that plan. No one knows when they'll die or become too sick to do certain activities. It's for this reason that I always encourage clients to do things while they can. If you want to go on a trip of a lifetime and have the money and time to do it, then you shouldn't save it for some time in the future. Do it now. If you want to learn a new skill or a hobby and could carve out some time during your working years to practice, then you should do it. Unexpected life events occur, so seize the opportunity by tackling some of your bucket list items today. Include a date, another important one. A wish list of items with no set date for when you want to plan to achieve them will likely just remain a wish. On the other hand, if you include a date by which you'd like to accomplish a specific goal, then you'll be more likely to reach it. If you are very serious about certain items on your list, I'd also recommend jotting down a more specific action plan for how and when you will accomplish them. For example, if hiking the 5 highest peaks in North America is on your list, then indicate when you plan to accomplish each peak, but also know when you will buy the appropriate gear and detail a training schedule to ensure you're physically fit to accomplish these objectives. Goals with no timeline are much easier to procrastinate. Next, it should be a living list. People's priorities and interests evolve over time. That's why a bucket list shouldn't be written in stone. Things can and should move down in priority or even fall off the list as your interests change. For example, you may have wanted to take a cruise around the world in retirement, but now have grandchildren that you prioritize spending time with. Perhaps the cruise should be deprioritized or modified with something shorter duration or just dropped entirely. The ultimate goal is living your best life, and the definition of best life may have changed as you age. Having a bucket list that is fluid can facilitate a guilt-free way to reflect changes in your preferences as your life evolves. And also keep in mind that many of the best experiences in life are beyond one's bucket list. We all relish the next big event in our lives, the trip, family celebration, some type of luxury splurge. However, some of the best that life has to offer takes place in our everyday mundane activities. This may include being able to sit down with your spouse for breakfast without feeling rushed by work. Perhaps it's babysitting your grandkids or watching a TV show together with your child or grandchild on a random Thursday night. It could be a pleasant conversation or a laugh you share with a longtime friend. I believe that as most people look back on life, they'll find more joy in these types of ordinary activities than more exotic entries typically found on a retiree's bucket list. Appreciating this perspective may be helpful to some as they contemplate their own bucket list. Now, zooming out just a bit, one of the biggest questions many families ponder as they approach retirement is whether they should hire a financial advisor. And it makes sense for some families and not make sense for others. And in my experience, there are generally four main reasons why someone should decide to hire a financial advisor. And hopefully this framework can simplify the decision process for many. One, you don't know what you're doing. Many smart and successful people don't make good financial planning or investing decisions. It has nothing to do with intellect. It's simply because studying the field of personal finance is not how they spend their time. Not being immersed in a certain area will certainly cause folks to miss planning opportunities. Getting your financial advice from friends and family is generally a good indication of this. This is similar to going to the gym and selecting your exercise routine based on what you see other people doing. What others do should not impact your approach. You need a strategy that caters to your circumstances and goals. Playing copycat to what your friends on the golf course are doing is ill advised. Two is that you're too busy. There's a finite amount of time in the day. Not every task can realistically be done by yourself. Delegating certain tasks frees up your time, allowing you to spend it on other more enjoyable or productive areas. For many retirees, this point rings very true. They've spent 4 to 5 decades in the workforce. They don't want a new part time job researching how to best allocate their investments or the latest strategies to save on taxes. Instead, they'll pay a financial advisor to handle these tasks so they can spend their time on the golf course, relaxing with friends or family, or pursuing other endeavors that spark more joy in their life. Three is that you're too emotionally involved, and this is so common. Getting emotional about your investments is very common, but it is always leads to bad decisions. Some of the biggest mistakes people make about money are not related to intelligence or lack of knowledge. Rather, they're due to behavioral issues. Being scared, excited, or triggered in some way all can cause rash money decisions. There are always potentially emotional times. This may involve geopolitical issues, company related news, or an emotional attachment to a certain area of the market or a stock. The best advice when it comes to emotions in your portfolio is to keep them in check. Hiring a financial advisor to stand in your way to prevent you from making imprudent, emotionally charged decisions with your money is an extremely effective approach. And number four is family financial continuity. There are some folks who have the interest, they have the time and emotional stability to handle their own finances. However, their spouse or other family members don't share these same interests. If the financial quarterback of a family dies, their partner will need financial guidance going forward. Oftentimes, a family will hire a financial advisor to serve as a sense of continuity for their family's finances. The same advisor that they've been working with for years is continuing to help them make good money and investment decisions. Leaving loved ones in good hands upon your passing is one of the biggest motivators for families to hire a professional. So I began this talk saying that retirement today is very different than what it was for previous generations. Yet there are certain planning ideas that are timeless. And on that theme, I'll close today's webinar by sharing some timeless retirement wisdom from my grandfather. And just by way of background, my grandfather, whose name was Sam Blumenfeld, was part of what became known as the Greatest Generation. He came to New York City in 1947 after experiencing the atrocities of the Holocaust and seeing many friends and family members murdered at the hands of the Nazis. He didn't complete his schooling since the war interrupted his studies. Yet in the United States, he managed to have a family, start a small business, become an active member in his community, and he enjoyed a more than 30-year retirement before passing away several years ago at the age of 98. Here are some retirement lessons that I picked up from him. First, there was his focus on goal oriented investing. Many investors start investing without clear objectives. Sometimes they get into the stock market for a little excitement or because it seems like the responsible thing to do. My grandfather invested with the direct purpose of meeting his cash flow needs and leaving inheritance for his family. This laser focused approach was helpful in tuning out the noise. He didn't get caught up on relative performance since his sole benchmark for success was his ability to achieve his own objectives. That is why he was able to retire on a pretty modest sum of money that managed to support his lifestyle for over 3 decades in retirement. Make sure you stay focused on achieving your goals in retirement. Don't let all the noise distract you. Next is a theme that has come up multiple times, which is proactively downsizing. After my grandfather retired, he and my grandmother sold their house and moved to a smaller house in a vibrant nearby community. Many retirees hesitate when it comes to downsizing. They stay in their current home too long, oftentimes resulting in selling their home later under far less favorable or more challenging circumstances. Downsizing sooner can help simplify your life by offloading the burden of maintaining a larger home, and minimizing expenses, help cash flow, and moving into a residence that's more conducive to aging. Another important aspect of downsizing is getting rid of your stuff. My grandfather never really accumulated many things, just wasn't into it. But whatever he did have, he tried to give away to family or donate to charity during his lifetime. Giving away your things while you're alive can provide a tremendous sense of fulfillment and will relieve your heirs of the burden of sorting through your stuff upon your death. And my grandfather also intuitively understood what it meant to have a fulfilling retirement. He had a small business selling and installing draperies and told me that he stopped working when he no longer had the patience to deal with vendors or difficult customers he referred to as the yentas. In truth, he was getting geared up for his retirement years in advance. He developed a routine of community involvement, attending lectures and visiting family, and this daily schedule stayed the same for most of his retirement years. He also continued to stay curious and well informed, regularly discussing his new stock ideas with me and reading the daily newspaper cover to cover until failing eyesight made him actually switch to watching cable news at a very, very high volume. After my grandmother passed away, my grandfather even got a roommate, a graduate student, 65 years his junior. And during off hours, they had meals and conversations together, which helped him stay with it even in his 80s and in his 90s. To reiterate a point I made earlier, I always tell clients that it is essential to retire to something, not from something. The individuals with the most fulfilling retirements maintain a strong social network, a way to stay mentally sharp, and the ability to keep their days structured. And my grandfather managed to achieve all three of these things. And finally, there is leaving a legacy. When it comes to leaving a legacy, people often focus on the financial aspects of proper planning. However, I would argue that a legacy is not only about the transmission of wealth, it's also about the transmission of values to the next generation. Certain values are passed to your family by modeling behaviors, the way one leads their everyday life and how they spend their time. In addition to watching my grandfather prioritize his family, his faith, and community, I witnessed his ability to fully live in the moment. He was able to thoroughly enjoy watching his great grandchildren play in the backyard, chatting with his friends in synagogue, or spending a weekend together with his family. His enjoyment and happiness during all these seemingly mundane moments was palpable. In the age of 24/7 connectivity, this is what we live in now, and we're all facing it. It's very easy to lose sight of the here and now. There's always something else that demands your attention. Unfortunately, living for tomorrow causes folks to miss out on some of the best that life has to offer today. When I notice myself reaching for my iPhone instead of appreciating what's happening around me, I remind myself to live in the moment just like my grandfather would have. And this is perhaps my grandfather's greatest legacy and the one that will allow me to live my life to the fullest. The underlying theme of these aforementioned lessons is that some of the most important retirement guidance cannot be determined within the confines of a spreadsheet or financial planning software. My grandfather understood this instinctively and imparted that wisdom to me, and I continue to share that same timeless advice with my clients today. And that concludes today's program. Should you have any follow-up questions, you can reach me at jonathan@parkbridgewealth.com. Email is generally the best way to get a hold of me. Three more quick items before I let you go. First, this concludes my winter webinar series, but don't worry, my spring webinars will be sent out in the coming weeks, and we have an all-star lineup of speakers discussing a variety of different timely, practical topics. I'll be sure to send out the invitation to these programs in the coming days. In the meantime, if you have a friend or colleague who would like to be notified of these events, they can just subscribe to my webinar distribution list by emailing me with the word webinar in the subject line. Second, you can follow all my work on X and Instagram at Jonathan on Money, and by connecting with me on LinkedIn. You could also listen to my weekly podcast called Jonathan on Money, wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch my practical planning videos, which I post several times a week, by following me on YouTube at Jonathan on Money as well. And third, please take 30 seconds to fill out my survey at the end of this program. It helps me improve my webinars and provide timely and interesting content to attendees. I thank you in advance for that. And with that, this concludes today's session. Please stay safe and healthy and have a wonderful day, everybody.